Hi guys, welcome to the Revive Stronger podcast. I'm your host as always, Steve Hall, and today I'm very excited to have Martin MacDonald back on the show. Martin has been on the show 2 times before, episode 57 and episode 60. We talked about aggressive fat loss and then maintenance, and those podcasts went down incredibly well. So finally, after almost 3 years of badgering, no, I haven't been on top of him that bad.
You're not been too bad.
Martin is back on the show, and I know you guys are going to be as excited as I am to have him back on. So Martin, what's been going on? I know previously MNU was kind of more so in its early stages, and now it's well, I'm sure the majority of the listeners, if they don't know you or your name, they know MNU.
Yeah. So I couldn't believe it when you told me it was 3 years ago. Time's flown. I honestly thought if you had said maybe 18 months ago, but twice that. So yeah, MNU's obviously in full swing now, and the kind of current, I suppose, off the back of Nutrition Uni becoming this thing that I never thought would become such a monster, kind of all over the world. I kind of lose count now, but it's kind of 65 plus countries where we've got students in and kind of getting these insurance policies for people to practice all around the world now. It's quite exciting when that happens, but finally it's running smoothly, and we're creating actually a layperson's course. So people going, I don't want to commit to the full year of study, and I don't necessarily. It blows my mind the commitment some people have to nutrition. I suppose it's probably a lot of people listeners to your podcast, and we have had people sign up who are like avid Revive Stronger fans.
Oh, awesome!
And they have no interest. They do the course, they do the final exams and everything. They become, a certifiable nutritionist, and they're like absolute bosses. And that's why they geek out on podcasts like yours, and kind of all of that kind of content. And then they're like, yeah, I just did it for fun. And I'm like,
yeah,
what? It's not an easy course. It's like seriously time consuming, and hard, and requires masses of revision and. But anyway, so we had so many people like that, but then other people who don't want to drop, that amount of money on a course and necessarily have a stringent course timetable. So we've set to writing this a foundation course called MN School of Nutrition, and it's I've been talking about it on my Instagram stories recently, but the spec is like 200 lectures, but they're a lot shorter, and self-study. And really just for people to kind of become their own nutritionist, learn lots of the fundamentals, a bit more of a structured way of learning rather than, picking key topics from around the internet, actually building from the bottom up, which is what I like to do with people. So that realistically, other than my tour, which sadly I've had to sort of cancel this year, but that's a big thing for me at the minute, is the public speaking. And I just love going around and meeting people and doing this, but in person with audiences and that kind of stuff. But yeah, other than that, being a dad, that's about it. Yeah. And trying to get back into my training a bit.
Yeah. Now, it sounds like, I guess you've supplied it after the demand was there for it. And it doesn't surprise me that there is that demand. And from everything I've seen, what you guys put out and produce, I'm not surprised there's people that listen to this who just wanted to geek out and learn more, and they just go through it and then seemingly don't use it any kind of practical way necessarily, like to coach or do other things. They just want that knowledge for themselves. And I've seen you touring and drinking and having fun, all of that. I saw it over on the stories, and if people haven't got that, you're a great presenter from listening to this sort of podcast. So I imagine it's even better in person.
Yeah, I enjoy it a lot more. I think you take a lot more away from things when you're there in person. Like you've come to some of our kind of Mac Nutrition live events and stuff. It's just nice, isn't it, to be in the room with people and like have lunch with people. And I make a big deal of my events in terms of, like you just said there, the drinking side, not trying to put too much light on that side of things. But and you've given me a bit of an idea actually in terms of maybe I'll go on to do a podcast episode with someone on the kind of having a life as well as, a bit like the sort of minimum effective dose type scenario of living whilst having this interest in your training. And I had a question on my story actually. Martin, what do you think about people smoking whilst training? And I was like, what a question. Literally, you've gone like this end to this end of the kind of spectrums. I think I made some snide remark about it. But yeah, we do put a kind of lot of effort into the really good lunches and breaks and refreshments, and just making it a bit more of an event rather than a lecture. Come and sit in a lecture, and especially because they are, full day things. It's and just for me, it does turn into a bit of a comedy show, because I enjoy making people laugh where possible. So yeah, it goes down well. So hopefully the people listening to this will come and see me in 2021.
I completely agree with any seminars I've been to, and that's why we still run. Like, we bring over Mike Israetel and things, because there's just nothing like being there in person and being surrounded by a group of people that are all kind of in after the same sort of thing. And oftentimes, we're kind of a bit of a unique niche in some ways. So you don't just meet someone down the road who kind of gets nutrition like maybe you do, and you are kind of geeking out on all of this stuff. So yeah, those day events are awesome. I'm so glad you are actually still running them, and hopefully it won't be too long till they can actually start happening again.
Yeah, I hope so.
So last time you were on, you touched on a subject that is close to a lot of people's hearts, especially listening to this kind of physique competitors. They're always about kind of losing fat, gaining muscle. And I think you have maybe some controversial thoughts, or at least to some people, they're certainly controversial. Mm-hmm. And that was to do with kind of rapid fat loss. And kind of the quote, I think, from last time was like, basically, diet as fast as you can and you won't lose muscle. It was along those sort of lines.
It wasn't exactly that, but yeah, we'll go with that for shock factor.
Maybe that was my clickbait of what I've saved in my mind. So
I think it was something like, eat as few calories as you realistically can. Eat as few calories as you realistically can for the duration that will get you to your goal. And muscle loss is a bit of a boogeyman. That was the kind of, that's
way less sexy.
Yeah, it's less clickbait, isn't it?
So yeah, on that regard, I guess it would be great to just have a recap of, has anything changed? Has new research come out to say that you're an idiot, or to confirm that you've actually been kind of touting something that is actually very, very efficacious for us? And then we can get into some details of who it might be for and those sort of questions to make it a bit more nuanced.
Yeah, so I think it's funny. You are right. It's very, to some people, controversial. Whereas, and if it's all right for me to jump ahead a little bit to what you said about who it's for and who it's not, that is the key thing to understand here. Is I'm not saying everyone should do that, and there are specific scenarios, and we went into kind of the upper level of nuance in the last podcast. I don't feel like, the backlash was as much as it was actually, it was very positive actually. It was really, really nice. And so I think we gave enough context, but there's always more context to be given. And, with your specific audience, I'm talking to someone specifically like you, as far as I can tell, you stay, relatively lean year round, and maybe you don't feel like that, but that's your issue.
Let's not get into that.
let's not get into the psychology. But so therefore, competition prep, and we discussed that last time, didn't we? That, I wrote this article with these 3 different curves, and people sticking adamantly to a specific weight loss per week, or calorie deficit, assumed calorie deficit or estimated calorie deficit per week, versus what I would say is the optimal, the scientific, the calculated, this rate of kind of this decaying rate of fat loss that is necessary the closer you get to competition, if you're wanting to maintain all muscle mass. And realistically, I think in the kind of calculations I did, you ended up on like a 286 calorie deficit in the weeks before show. So ergo, no one would call that rapid, but it's maximal. If that's the maximal amount of deficit to ensure that 100% of your energy deficit would be coming from fat. And that was a specific person. I'm not saying that's a global thing, but that calculation gives you some idea. And it was starting maybe closer to the 1,000 calorie deficit mark. So yeah, going back to what you said in terms of or there being some controversy, or have things changed, or, from my perspective, it wasn't a theory. This isn't something that there are certain theoretical elements of it. And maybe when I talk about optimal, that's when I'm talking about the theoretical side of things. But we are abundantly aware that in the fat loss, people classified by their BMI as overweight and obese and above, this rapid fat loss stuff that I talk about is the most efficacious way of someone to lose weight, lose body fat, almost regardless of outcome. And so as the fitness industry, and this, to recap on what I said in that last time, was as the fitness industry, we've kind of shied away from stuff because of bad people, the baddies in the industry, this kind of shake diet, supplement pushing, non-coaching, non-qualified areas of our industry. So, when someone is literally going, oh, I need to make more money. We've all had it. I'm sure 90% of your listeners have at one time or another seen or had that message. Hi there. I'm just wondering if you're interested in earning another £500 a month without doing anything from home, and it's some MLM scheme.
Yeah.
And and then some people do that for whatever reason, and then they're put in their bio nutrition consultant. Yesterday they weren't, but today they're a nutrition consultant, and they're selling supplements and telling people how these things work to cleanse their cells, etc. And you just have 3 of these shakes a day and you'll lose weight. And the weight loss isn't anything to do with this fancy calorie deficit thing. It's something very scientific called cleansing your fat cells and detoxing your body. So that's why we hate it as the fitness industry, in my opinion, because we have these ideas of things. We also have maybe some unethical coaches who pretty much blanket just give you this template that is 1,000 calories, whether you're a marathon runner, female. And these people exist. I could name and shame them here, but I won't, out of respect for you. Don't want you getting the jip, but they, it's even got Steve's name on it when it's for, Hannah, the marathon runner, or the pregnant mum, or, or the breastfeeding mum. I mean, she might as well be pregnant. These people have no morals. 1,000 calorie diet for a pregnant lady. So this is why we hate it. But unfortunately, I actually coined this term in my head before I came on today, because I kept using the term, I feel like my mic's getting a bit droopy. I'm a bit limp here. Doesn't happen. This doesn't happen normally.
To the screen.
Yeah, okay. It's more attracted. It's going towards you. Good. We'll go with that. So we have this issue of the research area, the fitness industry, and the research area. And I kept in my mind using like these evidence-based people who don't know what they're talking about. And unfortunately, they're not really evidence-based. They're just nice guys and girls. And so I call them well-meaning idiots. And I have used that term before in other elements. But these are the people who typically we would go to conferences, they're learning from evidence-based people, but they just got this disconnect between what truly evidence-based practice is and not making statements without anything to back it up. So, stop losing weight quickly. If you lose the weight quickly, you'll put it back on and more, or faster, or you'll definitely put it back on, or it's not sustainable. It's not the way to do it. You should do it X, Y, Z. And there's not a hint of a reference in sight for their last 500 Instagram posts. But if you go to the literature of non-bodybuilders, and this is why some of this literature would be amazing. And I only actually recently, probably since we spoke, have thought a really long-term goal for me, because I'm not very money or business no, I love business, but I'm not profit orientated.
Right.
But a real reason for me to give myself a kick up the bum, to actually, push hard on the business, is to make profit, to then, we've got loads of charitable stuff that we like doing. It's amazing. But to set goals is always good, and we know this. But so my goal is kind of like, you know what, maybe I will fund a study. I've never thought that'd be something that I would be able to do. But fund some decent research, because research, as you know, is so expensive, tens and hundreds of thousands of pounds. So this research is on these obese individuals using crappy diets, using crappy macro splits. You know, I don't like macro splits, but crappy protein intakes is what I'm talking about. Using blanket low calorie amounts rather than maybe individualizing the individual. You know, it's 2 meal replacements per day. That was one of the studies I think we might have talked about last time. They're crappy. But when we compare those to a 500 calorie deficit type diet, to a conventional weight loss protocol, all the stuff we discussed last time about better outcomes, statistically significantly, both in the acute and long-term, follow-up. If anyone's new to, haven't listened to those last 2 episodes and you've jumped in here, you're going, what? Like, Steve, shut him down. Stop talking. This is mad. But this is 2000 era obesity research. And it's why, I can remember being a young nutritionist and hearing about the fact that my clients could previously have gone to the doctor and got prescribed on the NHS a 300 calorie shake diet, Cambridge diet, and prescribed, given. And I was like, I was enraged. This is ridiculous. This is madness. What's wrong with them? The problem is it's just misguidedness in that there is evidence that both very low energy diets, very low calorie diets, and total food replacement, so we're talking meal replacement type shakes, these things have unique benefits for weight loss and weight loss maintenance and adherence and hunger, etc., that we're not really taught about in the industry. And, I hadn't really heard people talking about this. And then, in 2015, I think I said this last time, I started educating large groups of evidence-based nutritionists, personal trainers, dietitians, doctors, and I wanted to wow them. And so I was like, what are they doing wrong? And what they're doing wrong is just being too moderate in everything, because we know people underreport, for instance. There's another area that this is potentially helpful for. If you prescribe someone a 300 or 500 or 700 calorie deficit, they might still be in a surplus or at maintenance or in a 50 to 100 calorie deficit because of underreporting. So yeah, that's kind of my first point is, this isn't a theory. This is the best available evidence that we have. And there's nuances, and I'm still super open to kind of criticism or critiques or just more research teaching me stuff. Like, I've got no dog in this game. I should have, but I don't have a rapid fat loss protocol that you can go and do and make me famous or make me money. I don't have a special shake program. I don't even have a flipping downloadable, although I am going to create one. Just something so you can calculate this, because I get asked these questions so much, just so that someone can hop over and just download my Excel spreadsheet that has all of the stuff I talked about on the podcast with you 3 years ago and stuff that we might talk about today. But just so people can do these calculations and understand how it might be implemented, because shooting on one of your questions, who is this for? It sort of can be for anyone if done correctly. So that means using relative calorie deficits relative to different elements of who they are that we can get into if you want to, rather than just everyone should eat an 800 calorie diet for as long as they can until they get to their body fat goal and stop. So anyone can use it if done right.
Yeah.
Hey, Pascal here. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about our membership site. Inside, you'll find a thriving forum, an extensive exercise library, courses, presentations, and research reviews. All I need you to do is hit the link in the description below.
I guess a lead-on question would be, I think in people's minds, when they think rapid fat loss, I think they think of like, I don't know, 1 to 2 pounds, or maybe 2 pounds plus lost a week. Mm-hmm. But what kind of you're suggesting is rapid fat loss is just losing at your relative maximum to what you can achieve and what's appropriate for you. So I guess that would be a place to start. Like if someone, for male and female, kind of on the leaner and less lean side, or I guess the calculation would then be applied so that you can take that into consideration.
Yeah. So to just expand on that in terms of, because that's quite a cool way to showing two sides of this coin, of there's the maximum rate that realistically you can lose body fat per week until you start dipping into lean body mass stores, which we are aware are not just myofibrillar proteins. If you're burning muscle glycogen, that's your lean body mass. You know, if we're using DEXA scans, and this is one of the big issues with DEXA scans, is you put two groups on two different macronutrient intakes, and one of those is lower carbohydrate. And we've seen people trying to cheat the system with their keto diets. All these people sponsored by exogenous ketone supplements, trying to make money and mislead people and steal people's money, using this to their advantage. Like put people on a keto and then carb them up in the last week, and oh look, they've gained muscle. It's like they haven't gained muscle; they've replenished glycogen. So lean body mass loss. So trying to the maximal rate of that. But on the flip side, there's aggressive fat loss and there's aggressive deficits. So I suppose that's how I would change the two. Okay. An aggressive deficit is, as it sounds, you know, maybe the amount above, or just a deficit and it getting larger and larger. So where does aggressive start? I can't really tell you. There's no clear definition, even if you go low carb. What's low carb? We have some limits of, okay, ketogenic diet and low carbohydrate and where they sit. But aggressive diets, they don't exist. Now, a very low calorie diet, in the research, you're talking, for instance, 800 calories or less per day. And that's, you know, we're not even talking calories per pound, calories per kilogram. Like the research isn't there yet, because no one thinks like fitness professionals and no one does research in bodybuilder. And you know, not many people, as you well know, your listeners know exactly what I'm talking about. So, and it annoys me because I don't necessarily want to do research in fitness types. But I want to apply what fitness types, bodybuilders, fitness enthusiasts know to the general population. So instead of calling 1.2 grams per kilogram protein high, because that's high protein in the general population research, because it's 150% of, you know, the recommended amount, and 150%, that's loads. But when we're talking, no, like 2 grams per kilogram is about normal, or 1.6, 1.8 is normal. And until you get to like 3 grams per kilogram, no one bats an eyelid. So, you know, applying some of that to these guys. So 800, aggressive deficits and then kind of maximal fat loss. So one thing that I'm going to put in this spreadsheet I'm creating is this difference between, and if you remember last time I spoke about the fact that for me, if I diet on, say, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 calories, which is a very low calorie diet for a male, I'm not very active, arguably, but I'm heavy-ish, you know, compared to a 60-kilo female. I'm hungry and I don't enjoy it. Whereas on 1,000-ish, you know, 800 to 1,000, as I spoke about before, I have much better adherence, much lower hunger. And this isn't an N equals 1. This is the data that we see in the research with randomized control trials. That hunger seems to be less, adherence seems to be better. And, you know, all this research to just put this in people's mind. If we're talking about adherence to something, and I suppose one part of your demographic, Steve, that I'm talking to is like coaches, nutritionists, dietitians, doctors, personal trainers with nutrition qualifications who are leading people through weight loss phases. I'm talking to you to help your clients of large initial weight loss is related to better adherence long term. It's related to better weight loss maintenance, etc., etc. So this is why I have a passion for bringing this thinking about, because by me telling people, you will then be able to help your clients better, and the world is essentially a better place when people aren't, jumping, we're failing them as practitioners and they're having to jump to someone alternative selling some wacky thing that's going to steal their money and maybe even harm them. So yeah, what's aggressive and who for? So I will say this now, males do seem to fare better than females across the board. So lean males versus lean females, higher BMI category males, higher BMI, premenopausal women and men of a similar age. And then you've got the postmenopausal females. Again, all of these different groups can do it, but there are special considerations, more often than not, for the females. And we could go into some of those if you want to. So for me, the way to start on this side of things, your maximal fat loss, and it's annoying because you have to try and attempt to measure body fat percentage, is this idea of, and this, I think I mentioned the Alpert study, or maybe last time, that was originally kind of 13. Through all these fancy calculations, you come to this equation. Your body fat percentage, so let's say you're 26% body fat, like an average female, for instance. What's average? Someone's probably going to get upset about me for saying that, but whatever. But I think the reason I say that out loud is almost like because some people hear 26% and think high.
Yeah.
And it's like not high at all. So 13%, and you divide your body fat percentage by 13. Sorry, 26%, divide it by 13. I've used 26 because it's easy for me in the maths. And the answer is 2. So we're looking at a maximal rate of weight loss per week of 2% of your body weight. So if you're 60 kilos, we're looking at 1.2 kilograms, which, based on what you said earlier about this kind of 2 pounds, is higher than that kind of rate of weight loss. So what is it? It's like 2.6 and a bit-ish pounds. So that's that kind of realm. And that is what I would deem to be, okay, we're maximally doing it. And the deficit to achieve that kind of weight loss is going to be a decent kind of level. Mm-hmm. So what did I say? 1.2 kilos. So 7,700 divided for 5. 8,000. So it's a 1,200-ish calorie deficit, slightly less actually, per day. And so on that front, then you get someone who's 60 kilos. Well, what's their BMR going to be? 1,200, 1,300 and something. And then how active are they? You start to go, geez, that's ridiculous. It's not possible. Mm-hmm. And that's the point where you stop and go, yeah, that's the point. I'm not telling you to eat 100 calories a day. I'm talking about for someone who's coming to you as a personal trainer and they're 90 kilos, for instance, and they can achieve this, and you're going, no, slow and steady wins the race, 500 calorie deficit. You're doing the wrong thing. And people are scared. If you give someone a 950 calorie diet, people freak. They see that number on paper. As soon as it goes to 3 digits, like I had a 49 kilo weightlifter, inactive, making weight for competition. She regularly was under 1,000 calories, but people just see the number and like, what the hell? And I'm like, she's 49 kilos. She's like, weighs like a child. At the same time, these studies on these individuals that are tracking health markers, they are tracking bone mineral density, they are tracking lean body mass, they're tracking fat mass, they're tracking all of these different areas. You've got someone who's 120 kilos on a 450 calorie diet for 3 months. People are like, you've got 2 elements of this. One, wake up. That's been done in medical settings, and yet sometimes doctors and dietitians can be muppets, but this is being done by researchers time and time and time again over decades. It's being done because it can be done. So wake up to that fact and then start understanding that there might be something to this. And my issue is with all of these studies is they use 1 gram per kilogram protein and they don't resistance train. So when you get, sorry, I know I'm going on. I talk, don't I? Is it okay? Can I carry on?
Yeah, go for it. I'll never stop you. You can talk the whole time.
Fine, cool. Don't say that. So since we did our last episode, a really cool study came out on my birthday last year. And it literally did this rapid fat loss protocol. And in this study, they looked at, they did a really good measurement of bone mineral density, and they used DEXA for lean body mass and fat mass and these kind of things. And I had so many people send me this and go, oh, you're going to, your head's going to get even bigger or whatever, when the study came out, because it was looking, and this was specifically in postmenopausal women. So in this instance, as I said earlier, you've got this caveat of, okay, bone mineral density is of particular interest, and we should try and be somewhat protective of it, and lean body mass as well. And so in this study, they actually found somewhat unfavorable results at 12 months. And this was, it was super low calorie. I think it was, say, 3 to 4 months, but it was like a 75% calorie deficit.
Wow.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that's your response, because that was my response. I was like, geez, I think so. For people who don't like percentages, if your maintenance is 2,000 calories, you're eating 500 calories a day for 4 months. And these, I'm fairly sure these were kind of like 30 plus BMI individuals, 30 to 40-ish. It might be slightly lower. And the other group, it was like 30-ish%. Sorry, I don't know off the top of my head. Around there for 12 months. And then this group did this 75% for 3 or 4 months, and then just did, a moderate deficit to the 12 months. So it was nice that they kind of matched the outcomes, the time scales, rather than just taking that point there. And the difference in muscle mass loss, which some people were like, look, you'll lose muscle. And this is something I'd love your listeners to take home, because I'm still seeing so many people talk about, if you lose muscle, your metabolism's going to slow down. And I called a registered dietitian out on this just yesterday. And I've been sent posts by decent, like decent educators, ones that I would be like, they're decent, not just educator in the industry, still going, no, you should diet slowly. Everyone should diet slowly, because if you lose lean body mass, your metabolism will slow down, and then you're screwed and you regain the weight. And the key physiology understanding that you need to have here is weight loss slows metabolism via 2 mechanisms. One, you weigh less, so you burn less calories. Because your basal metabolic rate is pretty much just a factor of what you weigh. There are small intricacies in terms of your body composition. And then obviously the metabolic adaptation, which relates to more long-term weight loss and how far you may be moved from this set point, a settling point that people like to discuss. But you lose a pound, a kilo, whatever, a unit of fat and the same unit of muscle. And the difference in your metabolism is, we're talking a handful, 3, 4, 5, 6, the order of. Not you lose 10 kilos of muscle. 2 scenarios. You lose 10 kilos of muscle. Like, imagine that. Oh, imagine, Steve.
I would give up.
Like,
Life's over.
Cold sweat. Yeah, cold sweat. Versus 10 kilos of fat. 2 different people. Look at the outcome in the physique and the type of ridiculous protocol you would have to achieve that. And yet the difference in metabolism based on that is 50, for instance. And we know this from looking at the energy requirements of organs and tissues in the body. So people need to stop saying that. That's not a thing. We know, a little caveat on even if you retain all lean body mass and you lose a lot of weight, Johnson or Johnston et al., I think it's 2002 maybe, but it's the extreme weight loss study where they retained muscle mass, lean body mass, and still they had this huge metabolic adaptation. But it's irrelevant. If you lose a little bit of muscle, your metabolism isn't tanking. And even in these studies where they don't resistance train and they don't eat enough protein, in over 12 months, 3 to 4 months of a 75% calorie deficit, they only lost an extra 1.2 kilograms of muscle. And the difference between the two groups was like 2 kilograms and 3.2 kilograms. So again, but the difference in weight loss was enormous. And there's so many cool, intricate parts of this study. Because when you then go, okay, what if, and I mentioned this on the podcast last time with you, is that people need to remember we need to account for either matching time or matching weight loss, because we need to be able to have the two different time points. Because if you go, in the leaner individuals, that is it the Garth study or Miro study? Can't remember off the top of my head, but they go, oh, don't diet faster because your testosterone levels are slightly lower after this amount of time. But they lost double the amount of body fat. That's like getting on stage next to a guy who's lost twice as much body fat as you, shredded. Maybe he's got like half a kilo less muscle or something, or he's just got, finding it a bit harder to get an erection or something, or whatever. His testosterone's slightly lower. Is it even clinically significant? It's just statistically, measurably significantly lower. But you're there with twice the body fat. And it's like, people going, oh, this is why you should do it, bro. And it's like, no, he's lost twice as much body fat. If you dieted, therefore, for double the amount of time, then we could compare, because he's lost way more body fat. So anyway, in this study, what they did is they went, oh, well, let's actually correct for this complete difference in body mass and fat loss. And this is the kicker, is there was no difference in the amount of muscle mass loss. So even on a 1 gram per kilogram body weight protein intake with no resistance training, no formal resistance training, they're not losing more muscle per unit of time. And just remember, this is a stupid protocol. I mean, it's brilliant, but it's stupid. Just give them some flipping protein. The other cool, was it this study? No, I'm getting mixed up now. That was another study where they actually gave a half decent amount of vitamin D and some calcium, and they might have even given them, no, they didn't, still 1 gram per kilogram protein. But in that, the bone mineral density in that study was a bit better than this one I'm talking about here. But they used a mixture of males and females, which again, this is why I'm saying postmenopausal females, just beware of this. So anyway, they lost loads more body fat. They didn't lose any extra muscle per unit of body weight. And even if they did, it was 1.2 kilograms of muscle in a year. And therefore, let's put some resistance training in. Probably they'll gain some muscle because they're previously untrained. Give them adequate protein for a start. Give them a bit of creatine. Wow, let's go crazy. So this scenario of, and this is another one of those kickers or unbelievable findings, is the dropout rate in the 500 calorie day, the 75% deficit for 3 or 4 months was, I think, 3 times less than the moderate one. So again, you've got to take a step back. And what's everyone in the industry banging on about? Adherence, dropout, quitting, compliance. Now, I've got some ideas around the idea of the new ideas. Since we wrote M&U, I probably need to rewrite some lectures and stuff. But people have been quoting me on this thing of like, if you're never on plan, you can never be off plan. and kind of various connotations around that. But if you've got people 3 times more people not quitting, and this is where we come back to certain ideas. We don't really know why that wasn't a controlled for variable, but we then understand, like, because people go, and this is another thing that I see, these well-meaning idiots, influencers, personal trainers, nutritionists, they mean well, but they go, don't cut your calories too low, you'll give up, you'll quit.
Yeah.
Reference? You fancy giving me a reference? Everyone knows. Oh, why do I need to provide a reference? Because otherwise it's just your opinion and it's a load of crap. Because, and I actually saw you, I really like this, I'll give you some praise here. You said about you don't have to reference everything you say. Do you remember writing this?
Yeah.
It's quite recent, wasn't it?
Yeah. It was.
Look at this. It's good. Taking stuff from everywhere. But it's a great analogy to use here. You don't have to have a reference to back up what you're saying. You can talk about your own experience. Fantastic. But you have to be open to, 1, be challenged, and 2, you can't say it as fact, especially when the preponderance of data says you're completely wrong. You need to go, I'm missing something here. I'm an idiot. But people are too arrogant to do that. You know, it's like fasted cardio. Well, I found when I did it, right, okay. But that's completely irrelevant, because it's not even like the data is equivocal. That's a good scenario. When the data is equivocal, not really sure. But when there's literally nothing to back you up, and there's all this stuff to go, actually, we've really quite specifically tested this, and based on some laws of thermodynamics, nah, it's not happening. So I really like the kind of way you frame that. So people can't be going, don't drop your calories too low, because you'll quit, because that's not what's happening in the real world. These aren't lab rats. These are real people in the real world who are getting help from dietitians, etc. I'm gonna pause for breath. Just
You did cover a heck of a lot there.
Hi guys, Steve here. Just wanted to take a moment of your time to remind you of our online coaching service. At Revive Stronger, we pride ourselves on providing personalized service that will take your physique and knowledge to the next level. If you're interested, check the description.
There. And I had a few thoughts, but one of them that immediately came to my mind that I think might be helpful for the listeners to clarify was your calculation based off that study was the 13, divide your body fat by 13. Is that the same for men and women, or does it depend? Because it tends to be that women are higher, just generally a higher body fat, so that would mean they could always theoretically lose faster. Is that still correct?
Yeah, so thanks for bringing me back to that. Amazing. So I want to clarify on that front, because this calculator, I've started writing it. It's just, it gets, the more you start putting stuff in, and then you're trying to explain to people, and the more you need to add in more boxes for them to fill stuff in. So, because I want them to be able to use this calculator to really just kind of test what I'm doing and put their situation. And one of the reasons I felt like it got more complex was thinking about you and your lots of people who are kind of fairly hardcore, I suppose, follow you. And I want to bring it to them just for the sake of, when you start your comp prep, photo shoot prep, whatever it may be, I just think people could make their lives a whole lot easier by dieting faster initially. And then also, I've kind of said this before, and I know you sort of said to me, oh, will you ever compete again? And no, but
shame.
But it does annoy me, because I would do things so differently now, and more individualized to me, and listening to myself instead of joker prep coaches, etc. And learning from my mistakes and being reflective rather than just just completely ridiculous, haphazard. So I started putting in this thing of refeeds within it, and understanding, because for me right now, I'm not particularly lean right now at all. So I diet faster, but when I get leaner, I still have this, I've got this newfound knowledge of myself that time restricted protocols seem to work a little bit better for me in terms of adherence and managing my hunger, and actually going lower calorie. And this is what this research shows us time and time again. I'm trying to think of a reference off the top of my head. Maybe Coutinho would be one of them.
Sounds
I
good.
think. And that one's quite a good one, because I think that's comparing like 2.2 pounds versus 4.4 pounds over quite a long period, maybe six months study. But either way, they found in the faster rates of weight loss. Oh, and there's another study. Anyway, I'm not going to go into it. But we see lower hunger in these. It's not just adherence. It's not just, oh, they're managing to starve well. That could be someone's hypothesis. Because they're getting results, they don't mind that they hate their life and they've got no sex drive and they're hungry all the time. But that's not actually what's being observed. Ratings of perceived hunger are lower in the lower calorie groups, which blows my mind every time. And I do have some thoughts around why that might be. But for me personally, going to that 1,000 calorie level, I'm less hungry. I'm less focused on food. I remember being a bodybuilder and it sucked. And I thought about my next meal as soon as I finished that meal. And I remember chasing the last grain of rice around my Tupperware. But I'm not like that these days, and I'm not as lean these days, but I've been in okay shape since then. Not stage lean, but I've been in good shape, much, much leaner than I would have been before, with relatively little effort and pains of hunger. So relating it more to this, I was actually just talking to Sarah when I was writing this calculator. And if anyone wants this, I haven't written it yet, but I probably will get it done. Do you know when this podcast is going out? Will it be in the next?
Probably in the next 4 weeks.
Okay, cool. So I probably will have it done by then. So I'll do it like martin-macdonald.com/rapid fat loss, we'll call it. Rapid weight loss. That's probably better, isn't it? Rapid weight loss. So you can get this calculator. And the reason I started thinking about this, Steve, specifically to you, was like, I would probably now diet on what would be lower calories than when I said about this divide by 13 number, that I would need to eat like let's say a 1,200 calorie deficit. But that would only put me at 1,400 calories, for instance. And then I go, I'm not going to enjoy that. I'm not going to adhere. I'm going to go down to my 900 or 1,000 calories. The problem is I'm dicing with lean body mass loss. Mm-hmm. So then I started thinking, well, I'm going to chuck in a few clever equations here and work out when I would need to do strategic refeeds, or even aggressive refeeds, like an aggressive 3-day refeed where we could mess with some of the magics of leptin and testosterone and thyroid output, or just simply a refeed day around, on day 8, for instance. Mm-hmm. And this Excel spreadsheet, which it sounds more complicated than it is. It's relatively easy to just type these numbers in and use the calculations. Because for me, I think I'd probably do that. It's easier for me to just focus on that hardcore boom. It's motivating, stepping on the scales every single morning and seeing weight loss, and then knowing, and some people would liken this to elements of cheats. And there's a big discussion around that, which this isn't that. And if you think it is, you're an idiot. But it's a great way for people's mind to go to. But don't start thinking I'm wrong because, oh, you're just promoting that, because it's not the case. I've thought about this very hard. I've spoken to some of the leading eating disorder researchers and practitioners and NICE guidelines people on this stuff. And there's a lot of difference in the intention in what you do. Cheats are ridiculous. It's a terrible word for people to be using. But using things as strategic refeeds is calculated. The size of the deficit, I will say this now, the research does not support any contention that this exact size of deficit relates to the likelihood of becoming disordered with your eating. Now, the further away you get from set points, the more obsessed you're going to get with food, the more that, leptin is going to go down and hunger is going to become ravenous, etc., etc. You'll get more mood disturbance, but it's not the size of deficit. That's the distance from time 0.0, or body weight 0.0. So going back to that thing of 13 and males and females, 13 has kind of been debunked. And so that's kind of bad of me that I haven't clarified that sooner. But people can go back to your earlier podcast, because I'm fairly sure I said this. I sit on the fence about around 15. I think if you're weight training, high protein, probably using caffeine as a stimulant, and maybe as a way to initiate lipolysis, the breakdown of fat, you can use 15 to divide your body fat by 15. So if you're 15% body fat male, use 15 divided by 15, 1% body weight, use that. If you want to be super conservative, and therefore we're talking fitness, enthusiasts, photo shoot, comp prep type people, use 20. And so the Alpert paper was updated with some changes in the mathematics of it to give 20. And I think that's too conservative, but between 15 and 20, you're looking good. Now, you hit the nail on the head of males and females tend to have different body fat levels. There's no reason to believe, like, we know that there are differences in substrate oxidation in a female's monthly cycle, but in general, females seem to be better able to oxidize fatty acids than males. But realistically, for what we're looking at here, which is, delta energy flux, like how much of a deficit you're in, it's just that women will end up higher than men in general. But if you get a lean female and a not lean male, like loads of the fitness girls are loads leaner than I am via a DEXA scan, and therefore it works for them. So that's why it's not relative to their gender, it's relative to their body fat percentage. Flip that on its head, forget body fat percentage, relative to gender, I don't want to be reproductive. If a female comes to you for fat loss reasons, or is, really wanting to have kids, this is something I don't think is talked about enough in the physique industry prep, is just remembering that you are dicing with someone's, like, lots of people want to step on stage. Lots of people have life goals. But when you also put on the table, are you happy to take the risk that you might lose your menstrual cycle and not get it back by going to that level of leanness? It just needs to be a discussion. It's not highly likely. Everyone should have informed discussions on that front. So this is the other thing, is if you're working with a female and maybe she's, only got a BMI of 27, which, would be in one of these categories where people are using rapid fat loss protocols, but she's doing it because she thinks, she's been told losing weight will improve the outcome for her IVF treatments, or it will, it will improve her fertility to lose some weight, not, just naturally. But then I did do a post on this recently. Then if she's just trying to get healthier before conceiving, and then she starts to get menstrual cycle, dysregulation, but she's so focused on the weight loss, she just kind of forgets why she started doing this, or the coach is pushing too hard, or whatever. So we do have this element of it, and this is another thing that's probably the hardest thing as part of this calculator, is talking about this concept of energy availability.
Yeah.
And we understand that, I won't go into that because it will create too much complexity, but this 30 calories per kilogram fat-free mass energy availability, which is I don't have as much respect as a lot of people do for this equation. And having met Anne Laux, who really came up with it, and asked her some pertinent questions that she couldn't answer, I do have some skepticism around how stringent people are with the figures that have been outlined there. Having some understanding of, when we go below that kind of level and we start getting this reduced pulsatility of luteinizing hormone and the things that will just lead to us having our menstrual cycle, me and my girls, but males release luteinizing hormone as well, and there's good research on within day energy deficiency and the way that impacts even males as well. So that's one of those considerations, fertility for a premenopausal female. You've got postmenopausal females needing to just a consideration about bone mineral density. One thing I will say in that is if anyone's a geek and they go and look at some of this research, just understand that when we do a DEXA, we're not measuring bone quality, and we're also not measuring any outcomes. So there might be a change in bone mass, but the bone quality and the strength of it is not being tested directly. And so, and likewise, the protein's too low. Lots of studies aren't giving adequate vitamin D or calcium. They're not using resistance training or any kind of impact, which would, do the, osteoblastic activity would go up and we could actually build some new bone. So that's something to bear in mind. So males and females, 15 is what I would say is where I would sit. 20 is conservative. You don't need to differentiate between males and females, other than the fact that females have a menstrual cycle and fertility around that. I'll pause for breath.
So I'm Steve Hall, founder of Revive Stronger and a coach of Revive Stronger.
My name is Pascal Flor. I'm the co-owner of Revive Stronger and also a coach, of course.
Revive Stronger has probably been going solidly for 3 years, roughly about 3 years.
Revive Stronger, to me, it is becoming kind of my child, my foster child. It's the gathering and getting together of like-minded people.
We've been expanding the coaching team, which is helping us help more people, but each coach can only help a certain number of people.
Right now, it's all over the place. We have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have Instagram, but there isn't that community aspect behind that.
And so the next step for us is developing a membership site.
So basically, we want to create a family and a community that is then benefiting from another.
A really cool community for people within our little niche is going to be a website.
They will get early access to our podcast.
You can access us, ask us questions.
The community aspect, we have a forum there. You can ask questions, but also you can log your journey.
There's also going to be courses on there.
Courses, presentations on different topics. Discount of past seminar footage. We will log our journey as well. We'll start vlogging.
We're going to have documentaries.
Our entire athletic journey. Furthermore, they get access to an exercise video library.
The exercises that we love for hypertrophy and maximizing hypertrophy, we're going to go through those in depth, telling you how to execute them.
We kept them concise and also mobile friendly so that you can watch them in between your sets.
I'm super excited to grow this community. The amount of value that we're going to be delivering is huge, and I'd love you to be part of it.
You will get so much out of that.
I'll see you inside.